we all used to play in Central Park, all the mothers with their kids. And Daphne was one of the kids, and my daughter was one of the kids. And they all played together when they were like 2, 3, and 4. Then Daphne went to a certain school, and my daughter went to another school, and all the kids went to different schools. And fast forward, my daughter was 15 and Daphne was 15. And Daphne lived up the street from us. We lived on the same street. And we heard that Daphne and Christopher were convicted or, accused at that point of murder. So, all the mothers who we used to see said, Daphne, the little girl we used to see in the park. And so that got me interested. And then I'm a writer, and so I sent out a couple of outlines to various agents to see if anybody wanted a book on this. And within 5 minutes, I got 5 agents, and then I picked one, and so then I wrote the book. That was my first of my true crime books. So the research was I try to talk to anybody who would talk to me about the case. A lot of people wouldn't, and that's always the case, as I found out later because I did more books. So anybody who either knew Daphne or knew Christopher, or anybody who went to, let's see, people at the church would talk to me, lawyers, Bronfman wouldn't. I thought, people would talk to me. So that's what I did. And then Michael McMorrow's family, he's the victim. I talked to them a lot. I became very close to them. And then his mother died. I went to her funeral. Yeah, it was, very sad. The part that's really sad is the victims, of course. That's the hard part about true crime. Firstly, nobody knew what had happened that day, and the helicopters were flying over Central Park. And when something like that happens, you think either, like there's a murder in the park or something, but it was like a frenzy. And yeah, people were stunned. When does a very rich white girl get accused of, gutting a man, and then in pristine, beautiful Central Park, although of course Central Park was not, necessarily the best place to go after 10 o'clock at night. But yeah, it was quite something, these young kids. As the paper said, what is a 44-year-old man doing with young kids? But it was like, I don't know, like the deadheads, like Rob Mooney said in the Netflix, the Deadhead group, which has nothing to do with this, made you feel like you could be friends with anybody. There would be older people, younger people, black, white, this, that. And the park was like that too. You could be with, older white guys, older black guys. You could be with Puerto Ricans. You could be with any group, everybody mixed. If you had weed, if you had drugs, if you had beer, no matter what you had, somebody would be willing to come and sit with you and listen to music or whatever you wanted to do. Yeah. So it was mixed, so the people who blamed Michael for being in the park were kind of didn't know what they were talking about, because everybody mingled in the park late at night. Not everybody, you know what I mean? That prep school kids would come, that was one group, rollerbladers were another group, but everybody kind of mixed. So, and then other people, of course, when it was said that Daphne and Christopher did it, of course, they blamed them. Nothing warrants somebody to do what they did, even if he was 44 and they were 15. That still doesn't say, oh yeah, so I think we'll kill him. Doesn't make any sense. And Michael was a good son. He had never done anything, never been in trouble. He drank, true, but so she was difficult. She was always picking fights with people. She was tough looking. She'd hang out on our street. She was, she was not your sweet, lovey little, blonde girl. She was to be reckoned with. Aside from the fact that she ultimately admitted it, that she was at the park with Michael and she was the one who said, let's gut him, and that, Christopher got jealous, which we don't know that that's the truth, and that Michael put his arm around her, who knows. But they were rollerblading out of the park, and they were, full of blood. And then they went into this, downstairs, they have this big slop sink or whatever you call it, and they were in there, wiping off the blood. She had put all her clothes in the washer upstairs, and so wasn't any blood that they could find on that. I mean, but she admitted it. She called 911. She called the police. I mean, she took them to the spot. 3 people were there, as they say. 2 people came out. So you only have those 2 people. One's pointing at one, one's pointing at the other. And how do we know? Who knows? Right? I don't know how you know. So that's the unanswered question. Who actually did it? Did they both decide to do it? Did, as Daphne says, Christopher go on a rage and do it? Did Daphne do it because she was the bigger, the heavier, the one who had the strength? I mean, Christopher was kind of they call him a herb. He was like this slight kid who, was like a lap dog and, followed Daphne wherever she went. And, he was not an aggressive, but you never know. I mean, you can turn. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't know what made anybody do it that night. And they say they were high on drugs. Yeah, probably. I mean, most everybody was saying they should have been tried as adults, but I don't know that there was that then. They had just turned 15, and I think the cutoff then was 16, maybe. But most people I ever spoke to thought, I think they got a maximum 6 years and 3 months, but I can't swear to that now because I don't remember. But, for doing what they did doesn't seem quite right. I mean, to most people, no. Mm-hmm. Especially because, he didn't do anything. I mean, maybe whatever he did, doesn't seem like, he didn't attack them so that they were all cut up. I mean, it wasn't a kind of bar fight in Park. So whatever they did to him, they did it. So if he called them a name, so if he put his arm around it, it's certainly not, warranting. So yeah, people felt that they should have gotten more. So many, knife wounds and then the gutting and, it's disgusting. It was just disgusting. I mean, you don't hear about that kind of thing very much at all. There are knife fights and stuff like that, but this was, as they said, overkill and just the grossest. Disgusting. I report on what happened, but I don't take sides. I say that I met the parents. I say this sympathetically, and then you can infer what you want. But I think if I keep my stance as the author of a book and the reporter of what happened, I'll just stay like that.